4 years, I had married Lord Wei in my cousin's stead, serving him with utter devotion and earning universal praise as the most deserving Lady Wei. Everyone envied my good fortune, until Lord Wei ordered me to take poison and die all to marry my cousin. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn on the night before I was forced into the proxy marriage. I banged on the door of my cousin Xie Lin, the man revered as an otherworldly immortal of the Xie clan, choking back tears as I said, "I don't want to marry him." He opened the door, still in his robe, gazing at my desperate self with a cold, calm voice. "Then don't." That one promise became my shield through every trial and tribulation that followed. The 3rd month of my captivity by enemy forces, I received news of Lord Wei's wedding to my cousin Shuiyun. The marriage of Lord Wei Zun and Shuiyun of Jinling was known to all. In these chaotic times, alliances between noble clans through marriage were commonplace, that is, unless Lord Wei still had a wife, one who'd been captured by the enemy while evacuating civilians in his stead. The enemy commander had long made his demand clear: trade 3 cities for my release. Lord Wei remained silent, until today. He finally sent an envoy, bearing 2 things. First, a message to the commander, mocking him for trying to blackmail a lord with a mere woman. He would never cede 3 cities for me. Second, a package for me, a pouch of arsenic, meant for me to end my own life. The envoy delivered Lord Wei's words. He said, "Yun, I have wronged you. I will repay you in the next life. Nothing more, nothing less." Trapped in enemy hands for months, I endured daily torture. Trapped between life and death, I waited and waited only to hear that my lord had taken another wife, and then to receive a pouch of poison, urging me to kill myself. He told me he'd make amends in the next life. 3 months ago, I was still the most envied woman in Wei's capital. Born not to the main line of the prestigious Shui clan but to a distant, insignificant branch, I'd been incredibly lucky to marry the young, powerful Lord Wei Zun in my cousin's place. He was a young man of boundless ambition, leading his armies through battles and glory, and I, standing by his side, shone with unparalleled splendor in the eyes of the world. No one knew the endless hardships I endured behind closed doors. Because I was a proxy bride, Lord Wei never acknowledged me as his wife. Never once looked at me with a hint of warmth. Without his support and with my humble origins, I struggled to survive in the capital. I personally tended to the farmlands in spring to demonstrate female virtue. I served my mother-in-law diligently for years, never making a single mistake. I knew Lord Wei had his heart set on ruling the realm, so I strived to be the perfect Lady Wei, winning the admiration of everyone in the capital. I thought that with enough effort, I could make things work. But I was wrong. At least, Lord Wei didn't think so. When chaos erupted in Yecheng, he left me behind to stabilize the army's morale, even though he knew the rebel forces would arrive soon, even though he knew I was just a woman. Before Lord Wei departed, I called out to him, my hands trembling with fear hidden in my sleeves. I asked, "My lord, will you come back for me?" Lord Wei turned around, the sword at his waist clinking against his armor. He said, "Yes." He lied. The city fell. I was captured by the enemy while evacuating the civilians, and for 3 months, he never came, not once. He was never going to come for me. No matter how excellent I was, I would never be the woman he desired. I never imagined that after dying from the arsenic poisoning, I would return to the night before I married Lord Wei. I was still wearing my wedding dress. That year, I was only 16. The members of the Shui clan stood guard over me, threatening me with both kindness and cruelty. He is Lord Wei himself. Marrying him is the greatest fortune imaginable. If you delay this marriage, not only you, but your parents will pay with their lives. The Shui clan of Jinling was a prominent, noble family. My own family was nothing but a distant, forgotten branch, a small, humble household, until one day, the main clan sent for me. They said the young lady of the main clan needed a companion. My mother, worrying about my marriage prospects, hoped this trip to Jinling would allow me to find a good husband, and she readily agreed. Before I left, she was filled with a mix of joy and sorrow. One moment she said, "Jinling is a vast land of talented people, with many fine young men. It will do you good to see the world." The next moment she sighed, "Yun, If the people of Jinling treat you badly, come home, mother will always be here for you. She had no idea, none of us did, I would never return home. Because the Shui clan hadn't sent for me to be a companion, they'd sent for me to be a proxy bride. As soon as I arrived in Jinling, I was forced into the wedding dress. The Shui family kept me under constant watch, afraid I would run away. From that day on, I had no choice in my own life, I was trapped, with no way out. But perhaps there was one way. Taking advantage of the old woman guarding me being distracted, I knocked her unconscious with a porcelain pillow and climbed out the window. If my memory served me right, Xie Lin, who would later hold the seals of 6 states, was staying at the Shui mansion at this time. He was the very embodiment of a noble, upright gentleman. I didn't know where he was staying, I only knew he loved to live by the water. I ran desperately toward the green lake in the Shui mansion, my body soaked in sweat. In my previous life, Lord Wei had tried to punish me several times for being a proxy bride. And it was only because Xie Lin spoke up that I escaped unscathed. If I could find Xie Lin, perhaps he could help me. The lights in the Shui mansion flickered on one by one, and guards and maids swarmed out to search for me, their footsteps drawing closer and closer. I heard someone shout, "There she is." I stumbled into a small villa by the lake and banged on a closed door. The steward, leading a group of men, stopped outside the villa, hesitating to enter as if wary of something. In the next instant, the door opened from within, and the young master of the Xie clan, dressed in his robe, stood before me. I was too exhausted to speak, only a few words escaped my lips, choked with sobs. "I don't want to marry him. Please, can you help me?" My wedding dress was torn from running, my face streaked with sweat and dirt. The steward called out from outside the villa, "Young Master Xie, this runaway bride has disturbed your rest, we will take her away at once." He paid the steward no heed, his eyes fixed on me. Xie Lin's voice, soft yet firm, seemed to be addressed to me as much as to the men behind him. Moonlight spilled over his face. He said, "Then don't marry him." At the end of my rope, that one promise became my salvation. From that day forward, through every trial and tribulation, he stood by my side, never breaking his word. Xie Lin sent a letter to the elder of the Shui clan, then ordered a maid to take me to bathe and change clothes. When I emerged, he was brewing tea on the veranda. The doors were wide open, the white silk curtains fluttering in the night breeze, and the sound of his wooden clogs echoed softly on the corridor. I sat down across from him, my movements cautious. The surroundings were as quiet as still water. As if the chaos and pursuit of half an hour ago had never happened, only the dull ache of the scratches on my body from running reminded me that this was not a dream. It was already the 3rd watch of the night. By dawn, the Shui clan would send their daughter to the wedding, yet in the distance, the wedding lanterns blazed bright, and the servants continued to bustle about with the preparations. The Shui clan was still going to marry off their daughter. I clutched the hem of my dress, my voice tight with anxiety, and asked, "Who is going to marry him?" A sense of panic washed over me unconsciously. I feared that by dawn, the Shui clan would come to drag me back. I feared that Xie Lin's promise would be nothing but empty words. He pushed the brewed tea toward me. It was a cup of tea to soothe the nerves. Xie Lin turned his head slightly, his tone casual as he replied, "Shuiyun, the woman who was supposed to marry Lord Wei in the first place." I froze. This was how it was meant to be. The one betrothed to Lord Wei was always my cousin Shuiyun, but she'd refused to marry him, simply because she loathed the cold climate of Wei's capital, and that trivial reason had destroyed my entire life. On my wedding night, standing in my cousin's stead, Lord Wei had drawn his sword and pierced my veil, the tip of the blade barely missing my throat. He'd spat out each word with icy hatred. "You are not the woman I intended to marry." For 10 years of marriage, I never knew a moment of peace. Xie Lin had set everything back on its rightful path. This time, Shuiyun would marry Lord Wei herself. I would no longer have to endure 10 years of bitter cold in Wei's capital. I looked into Xie Lin's eyes, and tears threatened to spill over. I quickly lowered my head, hiding my face behind the teacup as I took a sip. Xie Lin said, "Finish this tea, then get some sleep. I will send you home." The night was cold and dewy, and I had returned to the day my fate had taken a turn for the abyss, and someone had promised to send me home. I changed into the clothes I'd worn when I left home, the ones my mother had sewn for me by hand. The fine silks and brocades of Jinling and Wei's capital had never suited me. Even as I boarded the carriage, I leaned out the window to ask Xielin, my eyes shining brightly, "Cousin, are we going back to Miaoxian County?" The Shui and Xie clans were distantly related, and if I strained to trace the connection, I had to call him cousin. Even the young servant accompanying us looked like he wanted to sigh. Xielin raised his eyes, answering me for what felt like the 100th time, and there was a hint of helplessness in his voice. "Yes, we are going back to Miaoxian County. Back to my hometown, Miaoxian County." I was going home. I let the carriage curtain fall, my heart bursting with joy. In my previous life, I'd married Lord Wei in Shuiyun's place. Marrying far away from home, 1,000 miles away, I'd always told myself that one day I would return home, but I never did, not even when I died. The carriage traveled for 2 days before stopping by the Danshui River. Miaoxian County was just across the river, but by a twist of fate, we encountered the Shui clan's wedding procession. Shuiyun was traveling to Wei's capital to marry Lord Wei and also needed to cross the Danshui River. She had set off earlier than us but had been stranded here because her boat had broken down. We happened to cross paths, and we could share the same boat. Shuiyun was the last to board. I stood on the deck, watching as she was carefully escorted by her servants, only to yank off her wedding veil and tilt her head up to look at Xielin. This was the first time I'd ever seen Shuiyun in person. I knew she was the most beloved daughter of the Shui clan, the most envied young lady in Jinling. The woman Lord Wei had never forgotten for 10 years. I had been poisoned to death because of her, yet I had never laid eyes on her face. Shuiyun was as delicate as a lotus flower in the wind, her eyes brimming with tears as she said to Xielin, "Cousin, I don't want to marry Wei Zun. The north is so cold, and besides, Wei Zun has a reputation for killing his own father and brother. Who knows if he'll kill his wife too? Can you help me?" Xielin remained silent. His servant spoke up in his stead. "Young lady, the Shui and Wei clans have long had a marital alliance. What's more, you are already a bride on her way to the wedding. You will soon reach the lands of Wei. Even my young master cannot change this." Shuiyun's voice was soft and pleading. "There must be a way." Her eyes darted to me, fleeting and dismissive. Even now, she couldn't be bothered to look at me directly. I thought she had guessed who I was. I watched his retreating figure countless times, yet he never once looked back. Wei Zun, along with everyone in Wei's capital and Jinling, had never regarded me as anything more than a girl of humble birth. The princess refused to be his concubine. She arrived in Wei's capital with her private army, determined to claim the title of Lord Wei's wife for herself. Every spring plowing season, I would go to the fields personally, working alongside ordinary peasant women to encourage farming in Wei's territories. The princess set fire to the farmlands, and in the chaos, she abducted me, throwing me into the sewage pond outside the city like a stray dog. As I was drowning, Prime Minister Xielin saved me just in time. I clung to his hand, delirious with fever. My tears burned my cheeks as I gasped. "I don't want to be here," he asked. "Then where do you want to go?" I bit my lip, unable to answer. "Anywhere but Wei's capital." But I couldn't leave. My parents were still in the Shui clan's grasp. I had been in Wei for 6 years, and Lord Wei would never let me go. Later, when Lord Wei heard the news and returned to the capital, he was furious, so furious that the entire court trembled. He assigned me a private army, and the princess died suddenly the next day. Lord Wei promised me that he would take no concubines for at least 3 years. The women of Wei envied me for this great honor. Only I knew the truth. Lord Wei had never cared for women, but one day, he would take wives and concubines of noble birth. My tragic end was inevitable. Never had I felt such sorrow as in that moment. My husband was a hero of the turbulent times, but he had never shown me the slightest hint of mercy. Prime Minister Xie, however, was implicated because of me. He had lived a pure and unblemished life, never taking a wife or concubine, clad always in white. He held the seals of 6 states in his hands. Rumors spread that he had stayed in Wei's capital only because he was in love with Lord Wei's wife. Wei Zun was enraged by these whispers and forbade me from ever seeing Xie Lin again, until we crossed paths on the palace road one day. I lifted the carriage curtain and apologized to him. These rumors are absurd, Lord Xie. Please do not take them to heart. He only asked me one question, he said, then where do you want to go? It was the same question he had asked me when he saved my life that day. If you don't want to be in Wei's capital, where do you want to be? Xie Lin raised his eyes, his gaze as bright and clear as the moon in the sky. He smiled faintly. What if the rumors are true? What if the reason he stayed in Wei's capital was not a rumor at all? Miaoxin County was clearly visible just ahead, yet I found myself unable to move forward. Wei Zun was coming for me, and if he truly wanted to find me, Miaoxin County would be easy to locate. The safest option was to stay by Xie Lin's side, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Across 2 lifetimes, I owed Xie Lin far too much. He had led a smooth and successful life, and I, a weak and insignificant woman, had no idea when I would ever be able to repay his kindness. The river water rocked the boat, and the night lanterns swayed gently. I couldn't drag Xie Lin down any longer. I was ready to disembark and bid him farewell. Cousin Xie, thank you. I am powerless to repay your kindness today, but I will repay it with my life in the future. Xie Lin lowered his eyes, his gaze fixed on the flickering lantern light reflected in my eyes. He spoke suddenly. There is a way to repay me. I froze. Xie Lin said, I must travel to Wu Prefecture next. None of the people around me are as careful and knowledgeable as you are. Yun, will you accompany me on this journey a while longer? He had always been astute. He must have seen the fear in my eyes. And he had probably guessed my complicated past with Lord Wei, yet he had never pressed me for answers. We were practically strangers, yet he had fallen out with the Shui clan and clashed with Lord Wei because of me. Even now, he offered his help with such gentle words. I held back my tears. Xie Lin, what if I am a terrible person? What if you are helping the wrong person? Xie Lin denied it softly. You are not. He never told me that he had been having a recurring dream, one he could never remember clearly upon waking. He only recalled a woman sitting behind a curtain, saying, Prime Minister Xie, I cannot leave. The poor women and children of Wei need me to care for them. Besides me, no one in the court will speak up for them. Lord Wei is warlike, but I can temper his bloodlust and prevent unnecessary wars. You have lived a life of integrity. You need not involve yourself with me, lest future historians distort the truth with their slander. My freedom does not matter. If one day you return to the south of the Yangtze River, please send word to my parents that I am safe. That will be enough. Her words were all about others. Her face was as beautiful as the spring mountains, and her heart was as kind as flowing water. She was kinder, more resilient, and harder working than anyone in the world, but she was never happy. Prime Minister Xie had led a life of unbroken success, but he had one regret: he had met her too late to take her away. She was such a good girl, yet she never got to live a good life. Floods were raging in Wu Prefecture. Xie Lin, who was renowned for his knowledge of everything under heaven, had been invited by the governor of Wu Prefecture to rebuild the river channels and alleviate the flooding. Every day, he wore a straw raincoat, leaving at dawn and returning at dusk. I had thought Xie Lin's request for my help was just a polite gesture, but to my surprise, he actually introduced me to the governor and let me assist in the official work. In my previous life in Wei's capital, whenever there was a natural disaster or man-made calamity, I had always taken charge of allocating grain and funds and comforting the victims on Lord Wei's behalf, never making a single mistake. The logistical work for the flood relief in Wu Prefecture was not particularly difficult for me. I contacted wealthy merchants, built shelters for the victims, and opened granaries to distribute porridge, personally overseeing every step of the process. Within a few days, dark circles formed under my eyes from exhaustion. I had originally taken on this work to repay Xie Lin's kindness, but gradually, I began to feel a sense of happiness. Everyone here called me Miss Yun. Miss Yun, my child had a severe cold and fever yesterday. Thank goodness you sent Dr. Liu to treat him. Miss Yun, you are nothing like those other noble ladies. You are the kindest person I have ever met. Miss Yun, we are so lucky you are here. No one dares to embezzle the rice and grain now. Miss Yun, Thank you so much. In Wei's capital, I had received such praise before. Lord Wei has a virtuous wife, gifted in both virtue and talent, but everyone there had called me Lady Wei. Everyone knew me as Wei's Lady Shui. No one knew my real name was Ayun. Everything I had done had only served to strengthen Lord Wei's kingdom. The continuous rainy days dragged on. On my way to distribute porridge, I saved a child who was trapped on a floating log in the floodwaters. As a result, my clothes were covered in yellow mud, hidden beneath my straw raincoat. I couldn't handle the food anymore, so I had to hand over the porridge distribution to someone else. I leaned against a beam, overcome with tiredness, and fell asleep. I dreamed of the scene after my death in my previous life. 1,000 miles of Wei's territory was draped in white mourning clothes, and funeral music played for months on end. Everyone in the royal city wore looks of sorrow. The court historians shed tears as they wrote my biography as a queen. Lord Wei broke off all marriage alliances with powerful clans, declaring that he had only ever had one wife. The common people who had benefited from my kindness volunteered to build my mausoleum. Lord Wei killed his warhorse, which had accompanied him for many years, in front of my tomb, saying, 6 divine steeds shall guide her spirit to the afterlife. He carved my tombstone himself, working day and night without rest. On the day the tombstone was completed, he coughed up blood and fainted. The stone was inscribed with the story of my life, and my name. Only then did the world learn that Lord Wei's wife had a name of her own, Shuiyun. My name was Shuiyun. I woke up from the long dream at dawn the next day. Someone had carried me back to my residence and changed me into clean clothes. The rain had finally stopped, and only a few drops of water dripped from the eaves. I jumped up in a hurry, my long hair hanging loose. I overslept. The officials are waiting for me to work, but as I passed through the courtyard, someone called out to me. Xie Lin smiled softly. Official Ayun, can you spare a moment to have breakfast with a lazy man like me? He sighed. I haven't had a chance to talk to you in days. Clear sunlight streamed through the air, like morning dew. The river channels had been rebuilt, and the floodwaters had receded, leaving only some puddles on the roads. Fortunately, it had been nothing more than a natural disaster. No man-made tragedy had been added to it. The people of Wu Prefecture were overjoyed. Coincidentally, when the governor was sorting through the government treasury, he found a warehouse of fireworks that had not been soaked by the water. He announced that the fireworks would be set off that night for everyone to enjoy. Xie Lin and I had both been exhausted from our work, and this was the perfect chance to relax. The night market was bustling, and the people of Wu Prefecture were simple and honest. As Xie Lin and I walked together, many vendors recognized us and insisted on pressing gifts into my arms. Within a few steps, my arms were full. Xie Lin watched me fumbling with the gifts, a smile in his eyes, until a young man called out to me shyly from behind, Miss Ayun. I turned around and recognized him as the young official who had helped me run the porridge shed these past few days. He gathered his courage and said, "You've come to watch the fireworks too. I know a great spot to view them, would you?" He never got to finish his sentence. Xie Lin cut him off with a simple gesture. Xie Lin reached out and gently held my wrist through the sleeve of my robe. "There is water on the ground. Be careful." When I looked up again, I saw the look of disappointment on the young official's face. The sky over Wu Prefecture was perfect for watching fireworks. I hadn't laughed this happily in a long time. After the fireworks display, I stood where I was, waiting for Xie Lin to come back with the sugar figurines he had gone to buy for me. Porters carried lanterns, and visitors wandered by. The shadows flickered and danced around us. I turned around accidentally, and there he stood, a man in black robes, under the lamplight. I had no idea how long he had been watching me. He had been waiting for me to turn around. In that one glance, the spring and autumn faded into insignificance. Wei Zun removed his mask. The great Lord Wei spoke softly, as if afraid he was dreaming. "Ayun, it is time to go home." At 16, Shuiyun had not yet been subjected to his coldness, had not yet been scorned by the nobles of Wei's capital, had not yet lost her first child while helping him with flood relief efforts. So this was how she had smiled back then, dressed in plain cloth and simple hairpins, yet her smile was bright and radiant. A bitter taste filled Wei Zun's throat. This was his Ayun. He did not stop to think why the proxy marriage had never happened in this life, why his path to marrying her had been so twisted and turned. As long as he had found her, that was enough. Wei Zun's voice was hoarse. You may not recognize me. I am Wei Zun, from Wei's capital. I once had a marriage agreement with the Shui clan of Jinling. I have come here to settle that matter. He had so many things he wanted to say, yet he could only choose the most ordinary words. Lord Wei of Wei wanted to marry Shuiyun, nothing more, nothing less. I shook my head. I am not from the Shui clan of Jinling. I am from Miaoxian County, a humble family. You have found the wrong person. The one you are looking for is Shuiyun of Jinling. My eyes suddenly lit up, following my gaze. Lord Wei looked over. A young man in white robes, as elegant as an immortal, was walking toward us, holding 2 sugar figurines in his hands. I took a few quick steps forward and took hold of Xielin's sleeve, cold sweat breaking out on my back. I smiled and said, Xielin, let's go home. Wei Zun stood rooted to the spot, his entire body turning cold. He had been ready to shower the woman he loved with all the honors in the world, to make her the most revered lady of the realm, to give her everything to atone for his past mistakes. But in that moment, he finally realized the one thing he had overlooked all along. If he could do it all over again, without the proxy marriage, without the coercion, would Yun still choose to marry him? After seeing Wei Zun, cold sweat soaked through my clothes, yet I was far calmer than I had ever imagined I would be. After I went back, I fell asleep without the tossing and turning and fear I'd felt after meeting Lord Wei by the Danshui River. I slept soundly. Perhaps it was because I knew that within Wu Prefecture's walls, Wei Zun could not take me away. Everyone here treated me well. Besides, Xielin was with me. I woke up thirsty in the middle of the night and got up to drink some water. A night breeze ruffled the copper bells hanging from the eaves, and I pushed the door open. Moonlight filtered through the wooden corridor. I froze suddenly. Xielin was guarding my door. He was sitting there with one knee drawn up, his outer robe spread out beside him like a sheet of snow, his head bowed as he wrapped a white cloth around his wrist. A sword lay pressed to his side. No matter what stirrings might arise in the night, Xielin would be right here. My eyes stung with warmth. I walked over slowly and knelt down in front of him. Why aren't you going back to sleep? Xielin said. The wind picked up tonight. I was afraid you'd be scared. Just a few simple words. Xielin had been bright and intelligent since childhood, yet for some reason, he'd felt this unease, an unease that could only be soothed by staying right here. He handed me a document. My eyes widened. It was an official notice from Jinling, seeking to appoint a female official to oversee sericulture, farming, and education in the Wu and Yu regions. It was not a particularly high-ranking position, but female official posts were rare. Whenever one became vacant, countless talented women competed fiercely for it. Anyone who received this document was to proceed to Jinling immediately to join the selection process, Xielin said. This document should have arrived earlier. The governor has reserved Wu Prefecture's candidate spot for you. He asked me to tell you thank you, Miss Yun, for all your efforts during the flood relief in Wu Prefecture. He spoke lightly, but I knew how much effort this had taken. The position of female official came not only with rank and real authority but also with the freedom to choose one's own marriage. No clan elder could interfere. Xielin had always known that I feared the Shui clan of Jinling would use our distant kinship as an excuse to force me into another proxy marriage. If Xielin hadn't introduced me to the governor, if he hadn't pulled the strings behind the scenes, would the governor have ever thought to repay me in such a way? I stared at Xielin, my mind going blank. So this was what he'd meant when he'd promised me then don't marry that night, all those days ago. Even if a lord came to propose marriage, even if the clan elders pressured me to wed, I could say no. I whispered, what if I fail the selection? What then? Xielin lowered his eyes, his voice steady as a rock. Then you still have me. He'd said it before. He was here. He would always be here, returning to Jinling. But the way everyone looked at me was completely different. Even the inn where I was staying was flooded with invitations to banquets, something that would never have happened before. Then I learned the reason. On the day the Shui clan sent their daughter off to marry, Lord Wei had personally traveled 1,000 miles to fetch her. It should have been a storybook romance, But who could have predicted that the Shui clan's young lady, Shui Yun, would faint from fright at the sight of the wedding fleet? Her pale face had been exposed beneath the red veil, shaming herself in public. Lord Wei had been furious. He'd broken off the engagement on the spot, he declared, by the banks of the Danshui River. A woman as cowardly and timid as this is unworthy of being a lord's wife. But Lord Wei hadn't left. He'd visited the Shui mansion again, not to rescind his words, but to ask for the hand of another young lady of the Shui clan, the 17th Miss, Shui Yun. The main Shui clan of Jinling had long since cut off ties with my family, yet my name had been recorded in their genealogy. During my stay in Wu Prefecture, the Shui clan had been scrambling to find me. Everyone assumed I'd returned to Jinling to marry Lord Wei. They envied my good fortune, flooding me with banquet invitations, all eager to curry favor with me. No one could have guessed I was here to compete for the position of female official. Not many people had received the official document to participate. The candidates were all noble young ladies from the Wu and Yu regions, each renowned for her talent and wit. On the day of the selection, Shui Yun was there too, but her face was sallow. And she had grown thin and gaunt. The other noble ladies sneered as they passed her by. Shui Yun had first been labeled foolish and malicious by Xie Lin, then publicly humiliated when Lord Wei had broken off their engagement for her cowardice. The only reason she'd even been allowed to participate in the selection was she was the most beloved daughter of the Shui clan. Nothing more, nothing less. Someone tripped her as she walked, she fell to the ground. And the pearl hairpin in her hair rolled right to my feet. It was a beautiful hairpin, studded with pearls. I bent down to pick it up, handing it back to her. Shui Yun looked up at me, and for the first time, she called me by my name. Her eyes glistened with tears and hatred. Shui Yun, I only didn't want to marry Lord Wei. What wrong did I do? You came to Jinling to find a good marriage, didn't you? We could have helped each other. What was so wrong about you taking my place? Shui Yun and Shui Yun. Our names were so similar, yet our fates could not have been more different. Even now, she still thought she'd been doing me a favor. I fell silent for a moment. Before I came to Jinling, I said slowly, I asked my mother, what makes a marriage a heaven-sent match? She told me I'd know it when I saw it. At first, I believed everything the Shui clan told me, that Lord Wei was a young hero, destined to be a great husband, on the way to marry him in your place. I'd even felt a flicker of hope. Back then, I was as young as I am now. I thought that if I worked hard enough, I could be happy. It didn't matter that Lord Wei didn't like me, that the people of Wei's capital looked down on me for being a proxy bride, that everyone thought I was too lowborn to be his wife. I told myself I'd be perfect at everything I did. But do you know how old I was when I died? I was only 26. My words were muddled, spoken more to myself than to her. Shui Yun stared at me, her eyes wide with confusion. She would never understand. I stood up. The selection was about to begin. I didn't want to be tangled up with Shui Yun anymore, not with her, not with the life I'd lived before. I took a few steps forward, but then I heard a voice behind me. Shui Yun said, I'm sorry. The female candidates were examined personally by the revered Princess of Nanyang, a woman of great virtue and achievement. By the time I finished writing my policy essay, the sun was high in the sky. Past noon, sunlight streamed through the windows as I set my brush down on the ink rest. The Princess of Nanyang happened to pass by my desk. She paused for a moment, but she wasn't looking at my essay. I knew what she was looking at. The fingers of noble young ladies might bear faint calluses from playing the qin, but my hands were covered in thick, rough calluses from years of working in the fields. I felt no shame in them, letting the princess gaze at them as she pleased. The essays were collected one by one, and the other candidates were called in one after another for their oral examinations. In the end, I was the only one left sitting at my desk in the vast examination hall. Dusk was falling outside the windows. I was the last candidate to be examined. The Princess of Nanyang had not earned her title through the glory of her father or ancestors. She was a woman of genuine accomplishment. She personally handed me a set of red and green official robes. With a female official's waist token tucked inside, I looked up at her, stunned. I hadn't even had a chance to speak yet. She smiled. Do you know why I chose you? The princess said, on my way to Jinling. I heard about the flood in Wu Prefecture and intended to go help, but when I arrived, I found everything in perfect order. I passed by one of the relief porridge sheds and saw you leaning against a beam, fast asleep from exhaustion. Everyone around you was calling you Miss Ayun. I remember thinking then, I wonder what her real name is. Then today, I read an essay, brilliant, insightful, its arguments surpassing those of any man. The name written on the scroll was Shueyun. It is a very good name. The waist token rested in my calloused palm. In the princess's eyes, I saw only encouragement and hope for a younger generation. She said, "You have an extraordinary bearing, gentle yet strong-willed. I have not met anyone like you in a long time, Ayun. I hope you will honor this position of female official." I lifted the hem of my robe and ran out of the hall as fast as I could. I wanted to share this good news with Xielin as soon as possible. He would be waiting for me outside. I was sure of it. I spotted a tall, upright figure in the distance. I ran toward him, gasping for breath, my eyes shining with joy. "Xielin, I'm going to be an official." But when I was still 10 steps away, I came to an abrupt halt, my smile fading away. The figure turned around. It was not Xielin, the bearing of a dragon, the grace of a phoenix. Only Lord Wei could command such presence, but the white bandages peeking out from his right sleeve were stained crimson with blood, wrapped all the way to his wrist. Betraying his injury, he was hurt badly, yet there was no trace of pain on his face, only his lips were pale. This was always how Wei Zun was, cruel to others, but even crueler to himself. Word had spread that Lord Wei was lingering in the south. Many people wanted him dead. These past few days had not been easy for him. Wei Zun seemed not to have heard the name I'd called. His eyes lingered on my smiling face, as if he were memorizing it, greedy for every detail. He said, "There are female official positions in Wei's capital too. Why not come to Wei with me?" Ayun, everyone in Jinling knew, Lord Wei had gone to the Shui mansion, offering the wealth of 3 cities as betrothal gifts to ask for the 17th Mrs. Hand in marriage, and he had been rejected. I stood rooted to the spot, asking Wei Zun only one question. "Where is Xielin?" A cold smile tugged at Wei Zun's lips. "That boy from the Xie clan, he has his own place to be," his attendant spoke up. His voice sharp, "Miss Ayun, don't be fooled by that Xie's handsome face. He is a vicious man. He secretly sent Lord Wei's whereabouts to the northern warlords, drawing hordes of assassins here. Every moment Lord Wei spends in Jinling now, he is risking his life on the edge of a blade." In Wei Zun's mind, Xielin was guilty of 2 unforgivable crimes. First, in his past life, he had dared to covet Ayun. Fortunately, he had died far away in the western regions. Second, in this life, he had dared to stand in the way of his destined union with Ayun. He deserved to die. "It was not Xielin who sent the message," I said softly. The wind fell silent at my words. "The Duke of Yi, Lord Shu of Chongju, Lord Wu of Songyang, I was the one who sent them your whereabouts. I gave your enemies the information they needed to have you killed. Lord Wei, the one you should hate, is me." Wei Zun's head snapped around, his eyes locking onto mine, unblinking. Ever since I'd been reborn, I'd been terrified of Wei Zun recognizing me. I'd done everything I could to abandon the habits I'd formed as his wife over 10 years. But that one word, Lord Wei, he had heard it from my lips 1,000 times before. In that instant, Lord Wei finally understood. The woman standing before him was the Shueyun who had stood by his side for 10 years. The Shueyun who had died because of him. A bone-deep cold washed over him, as if he had been buried under a mountain of snow and ice. He could not move, could not speak. He had thought that being given a second chance at life was a redemption, a blessing from the heavens. He had never imagined it was a punishment. He would never earn her forgiveness. The inn was bright and clear, even in the dead of night, the light crisp and cool. Xielin had not come back yet. I sat at the table, brewing tea, still the same soothing blend that helped calm the nerves. Xielin had always kept trusted men by my side to protect me. One of them had told me, "The young master is as clever as a spirit," but this incident happened so suddenly, he didn't have time to explain things to you in person. He only said wait for him. So I would wait. But the first person who arrived was Lord Wei. I did not tell my guards to turn him away, now that everything had come to this. The great Lord Wei of Wei only dared to stand outside the beaded curtain, not daring to take a single step further. It was better this way, because I did not want to see him either. But some things could not be left unfinished. A wind blew through the hall, and Lord Wei began to speak, recounting everything from the very beginning. When the Shui clan forced you to marry me in her stead, I was furious, I felt slighted, and that is why I kept you at arm's length for years. By the time I realized how good you were, you no longer smiled at me the way you did in the beginning. To become a lord, Wei Zun was rumored to have killed my father and brother. I thought I was forsaken by the heavens, yet how fortunate I was to have you as my wife, in the first place, but I was young and reckless, and I failed to cherish you. Your capture by the enemy in Yecheng is the greatest regret of my life. I had never lost a battle in all my years of warfare. I was arrogant, conceited. I thought I would make it back in time, that I would come for you. Who could have foreseen that a landslide would block my path on the way to Yecheng? I was one day too late. I failed to save you. That scoundrel Wang dared to use your life to blackmail me, demanding 3 cities for your release. Yun, I could not trade them. Every city he seized, he slaughtered the people. 3 entire cities of innocent lives. I was ordained by heaven to be their lord. I could not make that trade. I had no choice. Shuiyun, every word was spoken as if he were coughing up blood. He turned his head away, his entire body trembling, tears streaming down his face. He had prided himself on being a hero of the turbulent times, a man whose name would be written in the annals of history. Yet after her death, when Wei Zun looked back on his kingdom, he found that he had never failed the world, only the 17th miss of the Shui clan. I spoke softly, Lord Wei. Do you know how I died? I did not wait for his answer, my voice calm except for a faint tremor at the very end. That scoundrel Wang hated you with every fiber of his being, and by extension, he hated me. Your wife, he ordered me to be buried alive. I refused to take the arsenic you sent me back then. I clung to the hope that help would come until the very last moment, so I only hid a little of it under my nails. It was not until I was sealed inside the coffin, buried beneath the earth, choking on the darkness, overcome by unspeakable agony, that I finally took the poison you gave me. Compared to being buried alive, arsenic was a mercy. What a profound despair that was. I was just a woman who wanted nothing more than to live, yet in my final moments, I was forced to end my own life with my own hands. My voice was hoarse as I said, if not for the proxy marriage, I would have been just like I am now, a simple, happy young girl. I would never have had to endure all those sufferings. Lord Wei, it was not just you who did not want to marry me. Marrying you was never the path I chose. The beaded curtain fluttered open in the wind. I could see the dark red blood seeping from the corner of Lord Wei's lips. His heart was shattered. He said, I wronged you, powerless to make amends, powerless to turn back time. Without him, Shuiyun would have lived a long, happy life. It was he who had destroyed it. Wei Zun, you are unforgivable. The night had grown very late. By the time I brewed the 3rd pot of soothing tea, a blaze had erupted on the horizon, painting the night sky red. I climbed to the top floor of the tower. From this vantage point, I could see the waters east of the city. An endless line of warships was engulfed in flames. They were the ships Lord Wei had brought with him. Lord Wei had made countless enemies. It was only a matter of time before disaster struck him in Jinling. I was not surprised. His life and death, his fortune and misfortune, they no longer had anything to do with me. But Xie Lin still had not returned. Then a voice called out, Yun. I leaned against the railing and looked down, a smile spreading across my face as I curved my eyes. There stood Xie Lin at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at me, as elegant and upright as a pine tree. The night was quiet, only a gentle breeze stirred the air. Xie Lin ascended the steps, walking toward me. The palace lantern at the corner cast a bright glow, softening his features. Only then did I see how disheveled he was. Unlike his usual neat self, his white robe was soaked with blood, oozing steadily, and even his hair bore the singed marks of fire. He knelt down in front of me, carefully pulling a small kitten from his arms. I found her on the way here. I wondered if you would like her. Congratulations, our Yun, you are now a female official. The kitten was as white as snow. Round and adorable, I leaned down and lifted the sleeve of his robe. The knife wound was deep, so deep that I could see the bone. Lord Wei sent men to ambush me, Xielin explained, his voice low as he looked down at me, brushing over countless dangers with a single sentence. I burned his ships. It all happened so suddenly that I did not have time to tell you in person. Do not worry, it is just a flesh wound. Lord Wei will not be able to come south for at least 5 years. No more coercion from Lord Wei, no more shackles from the Shui clan. This was a life that belonged to me. It would be a long, happy life, so happy that it brought tears to my eyes. What more could I ask for? I spoke softly. There are rumors circulating in Jinling. Have you heard them, my lord? They say the reason I refused to marry Lord Wei is because I am in love with you. Xielin froze. His hands hanging at his sides tightened into fists abruptly. The Shui and Xie clans were distantly related. At first, I had called him cousin only to claim some kinship with him, a connection that would not hold up to close scrutiny. There had been no shortage of gossip about us traveling together all this time. It was just that no one had dared to repeat those rumors to his face. After a long moment, he said, "Village gossip is not worth listening to. I will personally put an end to it so that your reputation is not tarnished." I looked into his eyes and whispered, "What if the rumors are true? What if, Xielin, I really am in love with you?" The wind, the moon, the clouds all stood still in that instant. Xielin suddenly reached out and pulled me into his arms. I was surrounded by his warm, clean scent in an instant, ignoring the searing pain of his knife wound, casting aside the despair of the past. It felt as if I had waited for 2 lifetimes to hear his words, spoken in a hoarse, joyous voice. I, Xielin, am thrice blessed by fate. Thrice blessed by fate to have my heart's desire fulfilled, a lifetime lost, a lifetime reunited, and a lifetime yet to look forward to. The wind swept away the memories of the past, leaving only a bright moon and a clear path ahead. My life still had countless tomorrows to anticipate.